When do you want me to start? So it'll be recorded now.
Well, you could go ahead now and just keep talking about how the language changed over time from the time the reservation was created.
Okay. And as you can probably see, after the treaties were signed, then the whites brought in a lot of new stuff into the reservation, which we had no names for them. So therefore, we had to coin new words for them, like the cup, salt, pepper, and everything that you see on a table, even cigars and spoons. But then we have had these knives for many years, and also the fact that a lot of the electrical things and mechanical things are nameless to us. Even at the present time, we do not have had the occasion to coin words for them, like tubes, solid states, and whatever, and even video cameras and television. But we do call it television, which means a thing to watch. It's like a theater, the movies at the theater. And now, let's see, what was I going to say?
Just talking about electrical things, I was just wondering, does that home, would you rather have that unplugged? Or?
Yeah, picked up, yeah.
Okay. Can we...
Okay. And then it's hard for me to talk in the Flathead language or even Nez Perce, because since we have limited words in our language, so therefore I cannot express myself to the way I would like to when I'm talking about, well, whatever I'm talking about. And therefore I think I prefer to speak in English. And now you have been asking me about talking about the old days. When I was born, it may interest you to know that nearly all of us Indians, well, including the whites, were very, very poor. And to us, whenever we had even something like potatoes for dinners, it was a luxury to us. So we had to live off the land. When the pioneers were moving west back in the 1800s, their buggies, wagons, pack horses, etc. could hold only just so much food. They eventually ran out of food, and then they had to resort to eating insects, hawks, snails, or insects, snakes, prairie chickens, gophers, and so on. Later, the Indians have told them, if you had known just where to look for, you would have not had to eat those insects and animals. Now, unfortunately, the Indian food grows only just so much in each section of the country. Now, therefore, the women who picked food from her section, well, would pick more than enough to trade for food which was grown on another section, and then enough food from another section, so on. Now, my physics teacher once told me that over half of all the food which is eaten around the world was learned from the Indians. And they did give a whole list of things that were new to the whites here, like the good old standby turk, roast turkey on Thanksgiving, corn, potatoes, and so on. Now, we frequently hear about have heard of Irish potatoes. That was because the potatoes were sent back to Europe, and botanists and horticulturists bred them and cross-pollinated them so that the grew bigger and better. But then, of course, they were originally from America. Now we also hear of Turkish blend tobacco. Now the seeds were brought to Turkey, and the Turks grew them and made them better. And well, they made them better, so it's a little more deadlier than before, cancers. Because you see, white men brought us the white man's poison, the whiskey, and in turn we killed them off slowly with cigarettes. With cancer. Anyway, everything's about the even. And in the old days, whenever the women gathered food, if she gathered more than enough, then they had enough for the whole year. But some women did not figure on that, so they ran out of food before that, and boy, her family would starve to death. However, the men would go out hunting and fishing, and if hunting was bad, they'd starve. But if hunting and fishing was good, then they would have a nice feast. And in my kid days, we had to live off the land. Whatever my folks could dig up the roots, stalks, leaves, and berries from the wild vegetation. And I hardly ever had the occasion to eat the goodies in restaurants or things from the grocery store because we were too broke. So I was hungry all the time. So I made up my mind that someday I'm going to go through the grade school, high school, and on to college, and then I'm going to have a better job and save my money, so that I'll be able to go to a butcher's shop and buy whatever kind of meat I so desire. I will not have to go clear into the mountains through all the hardships and to get my meat. And instead of growing my gardens, which I could in my younger days, I did used to grow my garden, but now I can go to the store and buy all my groceries and fruit there with the money that I saved. Now that makes it so much easier for me. And now, like the younger kids, sure waste a lot of food these days. And I do notice at the senior citizens dinner, my gosh, those elders will get a plate full of food, and then they'll eat just a small portion of it and then throw the rest away. My gosh, I hate to see all that waste. Now, in my case, when I eat, I like to eat every crumb. In fact, on the end, I sometimes take a bread and then wipe off all the gravy and things from my plate and clean it. That's how much I still value the food. And so now, at the present time, I've got plenty of food. My deep freeze on our refrigerator is full, and my storeroom is full of food. I will not be hungry for a while. And that was because I saved my money when I was young. Now, I have attempted to tell the younger set or younger kids about that, but they don't seem to listen. They're too dumb to learn. They would rather go out and have a good time at drinking. They think that's more important than saving. They probably think that they've got plenty of time to save their money later on. But later on, when they realize they have only a few years left before they're retired, they won't have a penny in a bank, and then they'll try to save money, which will be almost too late. As a result, they'll be undergoing through poverty all the rest of their lives. And some of them, of course, have practically nothing at home because they hawk their things off and on until they're they do not have much of any worldly goods, and but I have been able to give away a lot of my worldly goods because I accumulated too dang much of it. So I thought if I ever passed on into the next world, then my daughter and nephew will not have too much of a things to try to give away. So I've given away about a half or even a pickup load of things to people whom I thought would need it, or to rummage sales. Now, sometime in the near future, I am going to have to load up another pickup load of things to be sold at rummage sales, or to give it to some people whom I think might need those things for their use. Because to me, I won't be needing them forever now. I am 73 years of age. Now, according to the average life expansion in Montana or the America, is that people are supposed to die at the age of 74. That's the average. And so I figure on dying in about 2 more months. December 3rd, I'll be 74. And however, a barman told me, since you don't drink at all, you can live for several years yet, because you're healthy, and you will be able to outlive a lot of people who are alive today. Now, they do know that people who drink will meet up with their makers, in the near future, because the whiskey eats up their liver and their kidneys. It kills them off. But since I don't drink at all, I might live a few years longer than the average. So therefore, but even then, I am planning on giving a lot of my stuff away. So I've got almost too much of worldly goods on hand. Therefore, I quit going to rummage sales, because whenever I see something at the rummage sale which costs a nickel, dime, a quarter, or whatever, then I think, oh, it's cheap, I'll buy it. But I hardly ever use it. Now, like when I was teaching here in Ronan High School, at one time I had 19 suits. That's because they cost me only $1 or $1.50 or $2 for the suits, and they were in very good shape. And I had about 30 shirts, which cost about 10 cents a piece then. And I had about 50 neckties, and those neckties cost anywhere from nickel to a dime a piece. And they were very good ties too. And then the shoes, at one time I had 30 pair, and I asked my brother-in-law to come over and pick out about 20 pair for him to take home, because he wears the same size as I do. And he was tickled and glad to do so, because later on they did have a rummage sale, and he must have made a few dollars out of that, the things that I gave him. And I do hope that sometime in the future the kids who are listening now will be able to try to follow my steps by going on into, finish their grade school, high school, and go on into college, and have better jobs when they go into life, and start saving their money. And then by the time they are in their old age, then they'll have a few dollars in the bank. It will give them the sweetest feeling in the world to know that they've got some money in the bank which they can go and withdraw whenever they need the money badly. Just like now, I do not know what it feels like to be hungry anymore, like I did in my grade school, high school, college days. And now, these days, whenever I want to take a trip somewhere, I go to the bank and tell that girl, give me $2 or $3, I'm going to jackpot. Or if I want to go to Las Vegas, and I'll tell that girl, give me $4 or $5 or $6. I want to go to Las Vegas. And there were, on 2 occasions when I went broke down in Las Vegas, I went to the bank and told that girl who wires home for some money, I told the local bank, wire me $1,000. Right now I'm going broke, and they did it without hesitation. Well, because I had money in the bank. But if I did not have the money in the bank, they would have probably told me to go to hell or something. And but now I wish the future kids would learn this from me. Then they will be able to learn to save their money and be financially independent when they get to be as old as I.
Could you tell me some more stories to shed light on what that poverty was like on the reservation when you were growing up? Just how poor people were?
Oh, yes. We were so dang poor at home that whenever my folks would hear that some farmer's cow died, within the radius of a mile or 2 or 3, then they'd go there and ask that farmer what he was going to do with that dead cow, and he'd say, well, I can't do a damn thing. It's already beyond use. It's spoiled too much. Then my folks would go there and skin it, and they'd take that stinking meat back home and cure it, and it was edible to some degree. But in my case, I would not ever eat it because I could still smell that smelly meat. Oof, it was awful for me. Therefore, they would always give me hell for being, not enjoying their food which they had gathered for me. Well, I'm not going to sit down and eat their damn smelly meat. Just like now, all my meat in the refrigerator are clean and fresh. I bought them from the grocery stores. And if they're kept in there too long, then if they're just beginning to get smelly, then I throw them away. Then when I went to school, in my grade school and high school, I did not bring any lunch to school at all because we did not have enough of food at home for me to bring any decent lunch to school. Now, I do know that the other kids, like the white kids, all they would have for their lunch is probably an apple to eat for their lunch. And some would bring a biscuit with well, it was cut in half and something underneath, in between a slice of the biscuit, like butter or jam or something. Now, even then, they were poor too. Well, everybody was poor. And then, well, what we had to eat was Indian food. Now, in those days, I ate so much of that, I began to get awful tired of it. Same thing day after day, day after. However, since the death of my grandmother and my mother, who quit gathering those Indian foods, I now crave for those Indian foods. Now, like that camas, I would be tickled and glad to give well, as much as $10 for a bowl of that camas. And then the bitterroot, I'd be glad to pay as much as $5 for a nice bowl of bitterroot mixed with service berry. Oh, to me, that's a bear cat of a meal. And they do have other foods like well, like the wild games, grouse, chicken, prairie chickens. Well, they don't have prairie chickens anymore, but geese, ducks, and fish, and deer, elk, and moose, and sometimes a buffalo. And I'm glad to pay whatever they ask for the price, you know, at the stores for those things. Or whenever I had the occasion to buy those things from the Indians, I was glad to pay whatever they asked for. And in my younger days, my grandmother's sister, Teresa, had an income of $500 a year. That's in the early 20s. Now, to the modern people, that $500 a year is just a drop in the bucket. But in those days, it was an awful lot of money. Now, the ranchers would then deposit her money at the Dixon agency, and that Indian agent would then allow her only $30 a month for her living. And then she would go to the store and buy $10 worth of some things which would last a long time, and which was filling, like flour, baking powder, lard, macaroni, rice, and prunes, raisins, sugar, and salt. And then during that payday, she would get 7 pork chops. There were usually 7 of us. That would mean we'd have 2 apiece. Then she'd get a large can of pork and beans, and a large can of some kind of a canned fruit. But if it was in season, she'd get either cantaloupes or watermelon, and a loaf of bread. Now, we call that loaf of bread a white man's bread, because we had to eat biscuits, bannocks, fried bread every day at home. And boy, I got tired eating it. Just like one rich family here in on this county, in his younger days, his mother